Mr. Sudhakar Rao, Chairman of the Bombay Stock Exchange, Ashish Chauhan, CEO of the Bombay Stock Exchange, Mr. Rupak Saluja from Investonomics, and lastly, my very good friend and somebody who deserves an extraordinary amount of praise for what he's done, Shri Vivek Law. Ladies and gentlemen, members of the media, I'm very, very pleased to be here today, and thank you, Vivek, for your kind words of introduction. What you have done today and the release, and which is why I was so happy to be here this afternoon to be able to release this book, is something that I think is vitally, vitally important for India and vitally important for us in the task of nation building as well. So just like your father and your father-in-law have served the country through their service in the armed forces, I think you're serving the country extraordinarily well by what you're doing today, because for all of us who are in the financial sector, we have to enable the financial sector, whether it is the Bombay Stock Exchange, whether it is the kind of information products that Vivek is creating, whether it's the kind of work we are doing in policy making in Delhi, whether it's all the other fabulous financial institutions that are here in Mumbai around the world. We have to ensure that our financial sector serves the nation, powers the nation's growth, and really is able to finance our growth. And to be able to do that, there are two very important aspects, and I think this book is a very important player in this whole effort. There are two very important things that our financial sector must do. The first thing is that we need to be able to provide the right products and services for our people so that they can invest confidently and they can get access to the right financial instruments and services to be able to lead better lives. That's one very important priority for the financial sector, and all of us in the financial sector ecosystem are working towards that. The other very important role is that we have to be efficient allocators of capital in the financial system, so that as capital is accumulated by our savers and investors, that capital is then deployed against the most appropriate purposes for the economy, so that it in fact can power the economy and take India forward. That's vitally important for our financial system. And to do that, we need much, much more financial literacy. The savers of this country need to understand how they can best save to solve the genuine financial needs that they have. And if I have one small complaint about Vivek's book, which I quickly glanced through right now, which is you've set it up with the product view of the world. So you've talked about debt, you've talked about equity, you've talked about mutual funds and so on. But when you ask the general public, and I speak as somebody who's both a financial sector person, but also somebody who represents the general public. The general public is less concerned about equity. They're less concerned about debt. They're less concerned about the stock market. What they're concerned about is, how do I protect myself against inflation? How do I ensure that I have sufficient money for my children's education, for my daughter's marriage, for my retirement? Those are the day-to-day problems that they face. And financial literacy plays a very, very important role in being able to enable people to fulfill these needs. And as they fulfill these needs, in this case, 1.25 billion people in this country fulfill this need, but also 6 billion people around the world fulfill this need. We see the pension money coming into India. We see money coming in from many different sources, whether it is fixed income, whether it is equity, all that money coming into our markets, our capital markets, and from there being dispersed to various purposes, some productive, some sadly not so productive, and that's, ladies and gentlemen, what makes the economy go round. That's what makes the economy go round. So this kind of information, this kind of knowledge, this kind of multilingual dissemination of how to solve your particular problems is really what's going to power the economy. And therefore, a book like this, a website like this, everything that you all are doing is going to be vitally important. Now, as you do this, as you think about what the day-to-day problems are for our people, and try and shed light on that, and try and make them more aware and sophisticated in how they can solve their problems. Vivek, I would urge you and your colleagues to think about 3 specific challenges which we need to be able to address for the people of this country. 3 specific challenges. The first and the most basic challenge is that we have to build trust in our financial system. We have to build trust in our financial system. Because today, if you were to ask most people, माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी हरदम कहते हैं कि हमें सामान्य व्यक्ति के बारे में सोचना चाहिए कि सामान्य व्यक्ति की क्या मांगे हैं, क्या ज़रूरतें हैं. तो अगर हम सामान्य व्यक्ति के नज़रिए से देखें और सोचें कि उनकी क्या ज़रूरतें हैं, तो वो आपको बताएंगे पहली बात कि उन्हें विश्वास नहीं है. इफ़ यू डोंट ट्रस्ट, अगर आपको भरोसा नहीं है फाइनेंशियल सेक्टर में, तो जो आज के समय हो रहा है कि जो विश्वास है वो रियल एस्टेट में है या सोने में है. सो पीपल टेंड टू ट्रस्ट फिजिकल एसेट्स मोर देन दे ट्रस्ट financial assets. Now there's some very deep rooted societal reasons for that. We can get into it. But if in fact we have to meet the needs of our savers and investors, if we have to put capital to work on productive purposes, we have to build trust in the financial system so that vast numbers of people start to trust the financial system to look after their future, instead of relying first on real estate and then on gold. But if you scratch the surface of any person, whether they are somebody who's not so well off or the middle class, they will invariably tell you, the first thing I save for, apart from just, children's education and marriage and so on, is a house. So how do we get them to get out of this notion that you need to be able to set aside sufficient money in financial assets as well? We have to build trust. To build trust in what products can do for them and how products can fulfill their needs. And this comes to my second point. Why don't people trust the financial system? They don't trust the financial system, I believe, because of the corrosive impact of inflation over decades and decades and decades. When you put money into a bank, when you put money into the stock market, you don't believe that you will get the returns you are going to get than if you were to put it into real estate or land for that matter. And in some ways they are not wrong, because actually if you look at the real rates of return from various asset classes, the one asset class that is head and shoulders above everything else is actually land. Not buildings, not flats, but land which has not yet been developed into a commercial or a residential property. So there is some real good logic, economic logic for preferring land. And we are a densely populated country, and so anybody who's invested in land has generally found very good returns. So we have to be able to demonstrate that the financial instruments that we have can protect people against inflation, the corrosive effects of inflation. And there also, we have a real challenge. और इसमें चुनौती क्या है? चुनौती इसमें ये है कि जब आप सामान्य व्यक्ति से महंगाई के बारे में पूछेंगे, तो वो आपको स्पष्ट नहीं बता सकते हैं कि महंगाई का मतलब क्या है. और मैं तो टाउन हॉल्स और जनता के साथ वार्तालाप, इंटरैक्शन अक्सर करता रहता हूँ. तो जब लोग महंगाई के बारे में सोचते हैं, तो वो ये नहीं देखते हैं कि महंगाई किस गति से बढ़ रही है, यानी कि जो हम इन्फ्लेशन कहते हैं, द रेट ऑफ इन्फ्लेशन, लोग इसके बारे में नहीं सोचते हैं. लोग अगर सोचते हैं, वो देखते हैं कि दाम कितने बढ़ रहे हैं. आज चावल का भाव इतना है, कल चावल का भाव इतना था. दाल का भाव इतना है, अब दाल का भाव इतना हो गया है. और उसमें क्योंकि लोग गति के बारे में नहीं सोचते हैं, एब्सोल्यूट प्राइस लेवल के बारे में नहीं सोचते हैं. अगर आप उनके पास जाकर आज के समय कह के आइए कि महंगाई कम हो रही है, तो अधिकतर लोग ये कहेंगे कि नहीं, महंगाई कम नहीं हुई है क्योंकि सब चीज़ के दाम बढ़ गए हैं. Even though the rate of inflation from 10% has dropped down to 5%, the fact that there's still 5% inflation means for most people that महंगाई अभी भी है. और इसमें महंगाई तो एक ये रेट वर्सेस लेवल, जो इकोनॉमिस्ट जिसको मनी इल्यूजन कहते हैं, वो आज के समय लोगों के बीच में बहुत कन्फ्यूजन है. और साथ साथ एक साइकोलॉजिकल फिनोमेना है जिसको कहते हैं सेलियंस. अगर आपकी थाली है, तो जब दाल का भाव, यानी एक कटोरी में जो चीज़ है उसका भाव बहुत बढ़ जाएगा, 70 रुपये से 200 रुपये हो जाएगा, तो आपको लगेगा कि महंगाई बहुत बढ़ गई है, क्योंकि सेलियंस वहीं चुभ रहा है आपको. दैट इज द पॉइंट दैट इज हर्टिंग यू द मोस्ट. सो दैट इज व्हाट इज सेलियंट इन योर माइंड. परंतु अगर आप लोगों को समझाइए कि भाई देखिए थाली है, थाली में सिर्फ एक कटोरी तो नहीं होती है, थाली में कई कटोरियां हो. सब्जी की कटोरी है, आप अंडा की कोई सब्जी है या मीट है या चिकन है उसकी कटोरी है, आपके पास चावल है, दाल है, घी है, ये सब चीज़ें हैं. अगर आप इन सबको देखिए तो जो आप महंगाई महसूस कर रहे हैं एक दाल की कटोरी में, थाली में आप उसे नहीं महसूस करिएगा. बट द वे द ह्यूमन माइंड वर्क्स, बिकॉज यू रिस्पॉन्ड टू द सेलियंस, बिकॉज दाल का भाव बढ़ गया, आपको लगता है कि महंगाई बहुत बढ़ गई या आसमान छू रही है. This is another challenge we have to think about when we have to convince people to come into financial assets, to trust financial assets, that just because one thing has gone up, महंगाई बढ़ रही है, इसका ये मतलब नहीं है कि जो रिटर्न आपको मिल रहा है वो कम पड़ रहा है. रिटर्न कैन कॉम्पनसेट फॉर इन्फ्लेशन एज वेल. ये भी लोगों को समझाना बहुत ज़रूरी है, और सामान्य व्यक्ति को इसको समझाना, बिकॉज ऑफ द साइकोलॉजिकल impact of things like salience and risk and loss aversion, is actually a very difficult communication challenge, Vivek. It will exercise all of your great communication abilities to be able to do that. So महंगाई, पहले तो विश्वास, ट्रस्ट बनाइए आप, फिर महंगाई समझाइए आप, और महंगाई के कंपैरिजन में, महंगाई के मुकाबले में और सब जो फाइनेंशियल इंस्ट्रूमेंट्स हैं उनकी क्या भूमिका होनी चाहिए, ये आपको समझाना पड़ेगा. ये बहुत बड़ी एक चुनौती है आपके लिए. The third aspect that I think is difficult for people to work through is the time frame of various savings that you have to do. कि अगर बचत करना है तो किस प्रकार से बचत करना है और किस टाइम होराइजन से किस प्रकार का बचत करना है. So first thing is people will want to invest for some home or some flat or something for themselves. Then they have to think about their children's education, their daughter's marriage. And then they have to think about retirement. Now this came home to me very specifically when we had the whole issue around EPFO, as you might remember, during the budget time. So despite our best attempts to explain the nature of EPFO and Provident Fund and how you should use that for retirement and savings and so on, it was clear that there was a big gap between the way we had been thinking about some of these financial products and the way that the general public thinks about some of these savings products. So which product to use for which purpose and when and how, and what instruments to use to save for that, what is the role of PPF, EPFO and so on, what is the role of NPS, what is the role of an SIP, how do all of these fit and ladder together, I think is another very major communications challenge that you will have to deal with when you want to improve financial literacy. Now, having spent, and I'll conclude with this, having spent many years living in America, I can tell you that the average person there has a much clearer and more coherent understanding of various financial products, what role they play in their life, how they can solve their various financial needs through the usage of these products, versus even people who are very middle class, very prosperous in some ways, and are able to look after their financial futures. Because we have not yet, through our education system, through the work that we do in the media, and the work that we do in terms of financial literacy, have not sufficiently gotten people to the point where they have that sophisticated understanding of how they can use these products to improve their lives. That, Vivek, is the challenge in front of you. I think it's the challenge for all of us in the financial sector. Again, I'm very, very glad that I had an opportunity to come here and launch this very excellent book and really, hopefully, spark a good and solid discussion around what else we can do in this country, all of us in the financial ecosystem, to really improve financial literacy and, most importantly, to enable people to take control of their financial lives and therefore lead better lives and be able to participate fully in the financial system. Thank you very, very much, and the very best of luck to you.